Good evening and welcome to our Monday Live after 5. I would just like to talk about the Irish Property Owners Association. They put out an interview that they did with the Irish Times this morning, and then Drive Time had the president of the Irish Property Owners Association featured on the interview, and that's Mary Conway, a very nice lady who works in the industry and who owns a number of properties herself and is the spokesperson for the Irish Property Owners Association. So ultimately, she was talking about recent figures that the SESI released in terms of Q4 last year, 2022, that over 40% of properties that were sold last year recorded were rental properties, landlords leaving the market. And I can tell you now that of the properties that we sold last year, 125 properties, at least over 1/3 of those properties were rental properties. And there is a massive exodus of landlords leaving, and it's the same tune really. Why are the landlords leaving? Really, the high taxation is the key one, and heavy regulation. Hi Eamon, thanks for watching. Now, this heavy regulation seems to be getting worse and worse and more onerous for landlords, and even down to just not very user friendly in terms of the RTB, which is the Residential Tenancy Board. Now landlords have to register their property annually, even if the tenant is in there for years. And the RTB website is really not fit for purpose. It's extremely difficult to navigate. It's just another frustration for property owners. One of the real big reasons for landlords exiting the market is the rent pressure zone. So quite a high proportion of the country now is within the rent pressure zone. And landlords, particularly who have had tenants in their properties for years and years and years, and because they've very good tenants, they kept the rents at a pretty modest level. Now the tenants vacate and they can't bring the rent up to market value. I can so relate to that. For example, we sold a property, as they say, in the top of the town in Waterford, and the tenant was a RAS tenant, and the rent was left at €500 for years. So if you can imagine, eventually they gave notice because it just wasn't viable for them to keep the property with such low rent by the time they paid 52% tax on that. So imagine people who have mortgages, and then you've got inflation and you've got high costs of maintenance, and then you have this really low rent, and the tenant's been in there for years and they move out and you can't bring the rent to market value. That just seems really unjust. And I am really concerned about the rental market, because we do need a functioning rental market. You know, government might think, well, these properties are for homeowners. Not all these properties are suited to homeowners. They're not what young couples want, and we need properties available in the rental market. What do we do for our transient? What do we do for people who can't afford to buy properties? What do we do for nurses and doctors who are in short-term contracts? What do we do for the people who are coming into the country who obviously won't qualify for mortgage immediately? So government need to sit up, because we really need something to change. Why are these institutions, and Mary makes the point very well, that these institutions, that have large portfolios of properties don't pay the tax the private landlords pay? So the private landlord typically owns 1 and 2 properties, who make up over 73% of landlords, property owners. They pay 52% tax, and these institutions pay little to no tax. That is just wrong fundamentally. And obviously the government needs tax in the exchequer to run the country. But what's happening is just ludicrous. As I say, you're here with a broken system, and if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, except for I think it's getting worse. So very well made points by Mary Conway, and a great interview on Drive Time. I'm going to put a link to those interviews in the comments here after the live, and I appreciate you watching. And if you are speaking to your local politician, make sure you bring this point home. It's really, really important that the government sits up, because it is getting worse, and I see more and more landlords leaving the market, and so the market is going to worsen in 2023 unless the government makes some immediate changes. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely evening. Slán go fóill.